you still support Israel after everything Israel has done publicly and visibly and audaciously for over 2 years, I don't think you're capable of being reformed. You are one sick mofo, man. You are a danger to humanity. You are the lowest form of life. You are absolute moral scum if you continue to support Israel today.
First, they know it. The first thing these guys do is like, hey, guys, wait a minute. Look at these videos. Look at these brown guys. You need to hate them, man. We need to. That's their dream. Their dream is that we live forever in a world of hate. We cannot come together. Don't get together. You must live in hate. You must live in a shit society because then Zionism can survive.
Well, a few months ago, the New York Times, a Zionist newspaper, and the Israeli newspaper Haaretz published reports of a disinformation operation being run by Israel that was promoting Islamophobia in Canada and the United States.
What you see in these guys is just the epitome of how all these things, culture, race, religion, all these social constructs are combining into very nasty, evil people that serve empire.
If I were to be religious, I would be a Muslim. And the reason why I would be a Muslim is because the values of the people that I've met in my life and who practice Islam are most aligned with my own values.
Zionists and Hollywood and the West also have been so good at creating over the centuries a culture rooted in visible racism. Whether it's praying to a white-looking God, whether it's white angels, Maria, Joseph, etc., whether it's Hollywood movies with Allahu Akbar shouting criminals that grab blonde white women, all that conditioning has become so powerful that people are so easily swayed into seeing the victims as the savages. People sometimes wonder, why does he, also in my academic work, why does he focus so much on racism? And also when I teach international relations at the university, because it's such an important psychological organizing principle that just influences everything.
Ultimately, we are going to find ourselves in a civil war. I fear that that's where this is all heading.
Great. All right. Good day, everyone. We are here again with our brother Dimitri Lascaris. We haven't been talking for a while. Both of us very busy, especially Dimitri with all his court cases and traveling around. But I wanted to talk to you a bit about the things that are going on right now with regards to Palestine. Also, of course, the whole UN debacle. But before we do that, just want to say welcome, brother. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, brother. It's been too long since we had a good chat. I look forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. And I still want to have that discussion with you on our personal story. I still have that one in mind. We really got to do that one. Yeah. I was browsing my YouTube feed this morning, and I saw something, and I was like, okay, I just gotta discuss this because there's so much deeper stuff behind this that I want to discuss with Dimitri, and so allow me to share. It's a 5-minute video, but it's important because there's so much behind that plays a role in our lives, and you will get it once you see it. Allow me to share it with you. Oh,
America is a Western country based on biblical values. It's a Christian country, and Christianity in the Western world are torn between these two poles. One is Judea and one is Rome. And when it was talking about the Abraham Accords, well, that's obviously much closer to Judea. When they talk about major non-NATO allies, I mean, they're aligning a little bit more with Europe. And when you look at what's happened right now, first they said, all right, we're going to give you F-35 fighter jets but you have to join the Abraham Accords. You have to normalize relationships with Israel. And they're like, no, we don't want to normalize relationship with Israel until Israel builds a terror state in the heart of their country. And they're like, we'll give you the planes anyway. And he says, we're going to do this whole Gaza peace plan, but Hamas has to disarm. Hamas is like, we're not disarming. And we're like, all right, we'll rebuild Gaza anyway. And it's like, well, what's going on here? So what's happening is that Israel is being sidelined, and America is aligning itself with the larger, richer Arab world because America has interests. But here's what happens. The Bible speaks about, or at least the Jewish tradition of the Bible speaks about measure for measure. That if you do the wrong thing, you will be able to see the reaction or the punishment or the outcome of that bad deed in the punishment itself. And so right now, I just saw a report saying that there are 48 new mosques that have built in Texas alone in the last 2 years. It's like, all right, you want to align with Syria, you want to align with Saudi Arabia, you want to sideline Israel, you want to pull them to NATO and not pull them to Abraham. Fine, those 48 mosques that are going to be built in Dearborn, Michigan, just wait until the rest of America is under the rule of the, because people, it's so funny, people say, no, Jews have dual loyalty. The people that are chanting for the Hamas raising Palestinian flags, do they think they have any loyalty to America? It's not dual loyalty. They have no loyalty to America.
Yeah, they're burning the American flag and then going to churches, buying out churches.
I was about to say that. Like you mentioned 48 mosques being built in Texas, right? Not to even mention that a lot of these mosques are actually taking over churches, and the mosques are now operating inside of old churches. So the churches are just like Christianity is disappearing from America, and Islam is taking over.
There was this new video that just came out where they were saying the first thing we will do,
yeah, no, it's not even like subtle. It's like
play the video.
They're like,
right, it's right there.
Yeah, in the churches with the cross and the steeple still up there, going right in and praying.
So this is what we're doing. So we're praying at churches now. That's what we're doing, Sheikh. Astaghfirullah. Look at the brothers lining up at the church. Sorry, brothers. So where are we, man? We at the church? Y'all praying at the church? No. Y'all praying at the church? What are we doing here, man? Why have we gathered here? Okay, mashallah. We're going to convert the church into a masjid. Okay, man. Y'all was scaring me for a minute. Get the khutbah, habibi. Get the khutbah. Yalla, inna alhamdulillah. MashaAllah. Beginner stages.
And then this other video on the same topic is talking about how they're going to get rid of. The first thing we will do is to get rid of the all the American stuff. This is a cancer. It's terrible. I mean, literally, you could watch this as well. This is literally what's happening in America as we speak.
Say that we want to have revival of the deen. It means you want to bring the deen back as a practical implementation in society. If Islam was here as a system, as a way of life, there would be an army that would defend these Muslims. America, the American government, secularism, democracy, capitalism, these are cancers. Non-Muslims are tired of this cancer. They're tired of the American government. They're tired of democracy. They want to see a new way of life.
First move that I will do, I will abolish the Constitution and I will establish the only logical and rational Constitution, which is the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Can I tell you the greatest irony of this? I can't help but to think of our good friend Tucker Carlson. And all of these people are like, APEC. The APEC is twisting. APEC is like such a little small potatoes nothing. Maybe like, $50 million compared to $5 billion of influence coming in from Qatar all over America. They say, Jews aren't loyal. The Jews have dual loyalty. Do you know why Jews are all voting Democrat? Because they want to prove that they're not Israel first and the Republicans are more pro-Israel. And here we are hearing literally what they're accusing the Jews of is what Islam and the jihad is doing, and they're obfuscating that with the smoke screen and pointing at Israel and the Jewish people.
Look at the end here. Look at the end, eh?
1 second. Oh my God.
So this is their Israel, huh? So this is just pure. They just literally. It's just so
all the way to the Persian Gulf. Oh
yep,
man.
Yep. So, Dimitri, I showed you this video of these guys because there's so much going on here that is so important to discuss. So, did you see that that ending of with that icon of Israel spanning half of West Asia? You know, they just it's just so it's so full on. They don't even hide it anymore. You know. But what I find so why did I show you this crap video of terrible people? Is that it encompasses so much of our lives for the past decades. Why am I saying this? So we have 4 blue-eyed men telling people that they are telling Americans that they should be supportive of the Jews and that they should hate Muslims and Islam and all that kind of stuff. And at the end they even ended with like, why would you focus on APEC? It's Qatar that is the worst. I mean, can you imagine the fantasy these people live in? I've not seen a single politician declare their allegiance to Qatar. Okay, so please miss me with that crap. You know what I mean? But why do I find this so important? I grew up as a young guy when 9/11 happened. And I grew up in a world, and you too, where Islamophobia and Islam hatred, it was always there, but became such a central factor again of European and Western culture. And that hatred, that racism has been so incredibly helpful to U.S. imperialism. I wrote an article on my Substack a while ago where I mentioned that it's the holy grail of imperialism, why dead Muslims became normal. People may find it interesting to read. And what these 4 blue-eyed Aryan guys are doing is literally saying, stop pointing at our genocidal state. Keep hating Muslims. Keep hating Muslims. You must hate Muslims. And then, of course, showing some videos of random guys who say nothing violent, by the way. They say it's incomparable to what I hear evangelical Christians say on national television all the time. But, of course, it touches on the stereotype of the Arab that has been conditioned into us through Hollywood and other kind of media. So these 4 blue-eyed Jewish guys know by just showing you some videos of bearded guys that look a little bit exotic and say some weird stuff, which are usually they pick out the most fringe kind of Muslims, of course, for these videos. So they know that our also blue-eyed Aryan audience will probably be triggered by this. And they think and hope that they can redirect all that energy that is now against Zionism and the genocidal state of Israel, redirect it to, of course, Muslims and Islam. And it's just, why am I showing you this video? And I want your opinion on this. To me, it is, even though people will say, ignore these guys are ridiculous, these guys are this and that. To me, it's so incredibly enraging because I have seen what that non-organic hatred towards Islam and Muslims concocted by Zionism. If you don't believe me, check the research by Professor David Miller, among others. What that has done to our societies and to a very mostly quiet and peaceful Muslim community in the West and all over the world is so incredibly enraging and disgusting. And I am happy that it finally starts to become more obvious that racism towards Muslims, Arabs, Islamophobia is not organic. It is needed to for people to be conditioned into support for a genocidal state that slaughters Arabs, that slaughters Palestinians, that slaughters Arabs in the region. And one final little share that I wanted to do to give a bit of backup for this statement is something that I read, and you can see that here. This is on the New Era, but you can find it almost anywhere. And that is that I will quote it. Evidence suggests that much of this is directed by the Israeli government itself. It talks about anti-Muslim bigotry. Evidence suggests much of this is directed by the Israeli government itself. In late 2024, Israel reportedly increased its global public relations budget by 150 million, funding 150 million, funding to be used in consciousness warfare, according to Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar. Leaked 2025 documents produced by Stackwell Global, a PR firm whose founder is tied to the Likud party, reveal findings from research Israel's Ministry of Foreign Affairs commissioned. The research reportedly found that Israel's best tactic to combat this, according to the study, is to foment fear of radical Islam and jihadism, which remains high. Okay, so we're talking about a concocted effort to foment hatred towards Muslims and Islam by the state of Israel and, of course, many Zionist organizations. So people need to become aware of how extremely we are being, how can I say that, manipulated. Now, final point, because I know I'm talking already quite long, is that, you know why I keep saying these blue-eyed Aryan European Jews, is I say that because we have a very strong uphill battle. You have the bad guys that are blue-eyed Aryan European looking Jews that are to many people in the West, when they look at them, in-group members, and you have the victims. You have the people who have no power but look as brown Arabs. And why am I saying this? People always ignore this stuff. It's so important. Even if you know one is the bad guy, one is the good guy, we have been so conditioned for decades to, even if we know the facts, that a lot of people just can't bring themselves unwittingly to feel on the side of those people that are being demonized here. And there's this crack we see this crack right now, also on the right, where even fascists are saying, like, hey, wait a minute, maybe Muslims are not our real enemy. Which I have another discussion about that. I think it's dangerous that we align with these far-right people. But what I'm trying to say is that they know it. The first thing these guys do is like, hey, guys, wait a minute. Look at these videos. Look at these brown guys. You need to hate them, man. That's their dream. Their dream is that we live forever in a world of hate. We cannot come together. Don't get together. You must live in hate. You must live in a shit society, because then Zionism can survive. And I'm so angry by this. This is so angering because it messes up your life, Dimitri, my life, and many people around us, let alone the victims of genocide and war in West Asia. What is your opinion on this? Sorry for ranting on so long, man.
No, that's okay. I'm glad you showed me that clip. I don't know who those guys are. I've never seen that program before. But what we just listened to, I see every day in social media commentary, in X. And it's not just, of course, the United States where this kind of garbage is being said every day, on podcasts, on other social media platforms. It's pretty much every major Western country. It's certainly happening in Canada. Every day, multiple times a day, I see people who judging by their names, or at least the names they're using on their X profiles or whatever, saying Muslims, go home, get out. We don't want you here. You're trying to impose Sharia law. So this is a widespread sentiment amongst people who identify as Christian or Jewish, and certainly not all, but a very substantial portion of that population. And the more they lean to the right, the more they tend to have these sentiments. And that's just a tiny little sample of what is going on in our society today, what we just watched. And there's so much to say about this, Karim. I mean, I don't even know where to begin, but let me start with the thing that they said at the very outset, which is the United States is a Christian nation. They seem to be oblivious to the fact that there were indigenous peoples living in these lands that we now call Canada and the United States, and in fact, from the Arctic Circle all the way down to the southern tip of South America, okay, none of whom identified as Christian or Jewish or Muslim, and they were wiped out. Some tribes were completely annihilated, disappeared from the earth forever, and the ones who survived constitute a tiny little part of the population of indigenous peoples who were here for centuries. They never crossed the oceans to attack Christians or anybody else. They lived in these lands, and although there was sometimes conflict between them, they lived in a manner that was sustainable, and they were entirely divorced from the religions that dominated, in other parts of the world. So this land doesn't belong to Christians. They stole this land, people who identified as Christians, and they did so in the most heinous, monstrous, disgusting manner, every bit as bad as what was done during the Holocaust, every bit as bad as what is being done now to the Palestinian people. This ranked amongst the worst crimes in human history. So these people are just delusional. They're lying through their teeth, or they have not even a passing familiarity with the history of their own country. And once they eradicated the indigenous peoples, they then forced other non-Christians who were black from Africa to come over here and to serve as their slaves and brutally oppress them, murder
Or force them into Christianity, by the way, or force them into Christianity.
Correct. Absolutely. And that went on for decades. And this was done by people who identified as Christian. And there were also people who identified as Jewish. This is a historical fact, who were heavily involved in the slave trade. But as far as I can tell, it was mostly driven by people who identified as Christian. And I wouldn't be surprised also, to be fair, that there were also some who identified as Muslims who participated in the slave trade and profited from it. But this ain't inherently, that Christians don't have any kind of moral entitlement to live in this country and to control this country, these countries, and to be a majority in these countries. Maybe they could make that claim in Europe, but they have no leg to stand on whatsoever. That's the number one. Number two, let me say at the outset, I should have clarified this at the very beginning, because it is, I think, relevant to my point of view on all of this. I am an atheist, man. I've been an atheist for my entire adult life, but I was raised in a Christian family, Karim. And although my parents weren't fanatical, they wanted us to be, me and my three sisters, to be practitioners of the Greek Orthodox faith. It was more a question of nationalism for them and, historical pride than any, real strong devotion to Christianity, but it mattered a great deal to them. So I took the religion very seriously as a teenager, and I read the New Testament 7 times. For 5 years, I took religion to a stage that no one else in my family did, my larger family. My parents started getting worried. They thought that I was going to become a priest, and they wanted me to become a lawyer. They were so worried about it. And so every night before I went to bed for 5 years when I was a teenager, I read the New Testament, and I prayed. So why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this for 2 reasons. First of all, I think I know a thing or two about what Christianity actually is. I read the damn New Testament 7 times, for God's sakes. And secondly, you're not going to find a person in our society today who is more opposed to the idea of having somebody's religious beliefs imposed upon him. I don't want Sharia law, and I don't want Christian law, and I don't want Jewish law. I want to live as an atheist. I want to be free to be without religious belief. And I also want our brothers and sisters who have faith in a God to be able to exercise whatever their religious beliefs are, free from persecution. And to me, the role of a state it exclusively to protect freedom of conscience and religion. It should have absolutely no role in promoting one religion or suppressing another religion. None. It's like a referee. Just make sure everybody plays by the rules, and you're free to exercise your own religion or to be an atheist. So I say this because, if someone were a Muslim, were trying to impose upon me his or her religious beliefs, I would push back hard. But equally, whether it's a Christian, a Jewish person, whoever. So I care very deeply about these issues, and if I thought there was a real risk of some Muslims in our community imposing Sharia law on me, I would be worried. But I'm not even remotely worried. This is just fantasy, delusion. Who are these guys? First of all, you can imagine that they went out looking for the worst stuff they could find, right? The worst stuff they could find from us. That's the worst stuff you can find. Those guys joking, and that some random guy saying, I'm going to change the Constitution. I can show you videos of Christian churches that have been completely obliterated in South Lebanon. I saw some myself. I'm going to tell you about one right now. The 2024 Degaya Melkite Church airstrike, October 9th, 2024. The Israeli military conducted an airstrike on the St. George Melkite Catholic Church in southern Lebanon in a village called Dergaya and wiped it out. And that's just one. There are numerous other churches, including inside Gaza, that have been severely damaged or destroyed. There are how many Christian Arabs have been murdered and tortured by Israel. Okay? So compared to what Israel's doing to Christian institutions and Christian practitioners, those guys are like pipsqueak. You're worried about them? I'm worried about the mass murderers, and that's what we should be worried about. So the other thing I want to say about these guys, the people who say this stuff about, we need to get rid of Muslims, they're not Christians. They're not Christian. That's not Christianity. I understand Christianity, in my view, better than these bigots do. Are you kidding me? No, Christianity is about tolerance. That's what it's about. Jesus of Nazareth was a socialist. Jesus of Nazareth sided with the oppressed and the weak. He did not side with the strong and the powerful. He was not a bigot. He was not prone to violence. He believed strictly in nonviolence. So these people out there who claim to be ascribing to Christian faith while saying these bigoted things about Muslims are actually the Antichrist, in my view. And like I said, I think I know a thing or two about the core Christian values. And the last thing I want to, say in response, there's so many more things we could say. As I'm sure you're aware, Karim, here in the West, our governments have been obsessed with this garbage about foreign interference and how the Russians and the Chinese are massively manipulating public opinion in the West. Well, a few months ago, the New York Times, a Zionist newspaper, and the Israeli newspaper Haaretz published reports of a disinformation operation being run by Israel that was promoting Islamophobia in Canada and the United States. And the people who actually did this research was performed by an outfit called the Digital Forensic Research Lab, which is run by the Atlantic Council, okay, pro-Israel, neoconservative, and they were the ones who found the evidence of this Israeli disinformation campaign. The Canadian government did absolutely nothing about this. After squawking for the past decade about Russian propaganda and disinformation and how it's a threat to Canadian democracy, when they had the goods on Israel, they did absolutely nothing. So the bottom line is what these people are spewing, people like these guys we just watched, there's nothing about their narrative that is based in fact. It is purely delusional. It is full of hatred. And I would go so far as to say, although I don't purport to know Jewish values nearly as well as I understand Christian values, I think that the sentiments they're expressing there are profoundly anti-Jewish as well.
Yeah, and this also shows their arrogance, because let's not forget, these are 4 Jewish men telling Western Christians what is Christian. and what they should feel and think about other groups of people. But guess what? You guys are not Christians. And when you see how Israel treats its own Christians, besides the Christians in the region, then you'd be shocked about that. So then I wonder what is it that makes you think you can speak for Christians with such arrogance, and also that you can speak about Arabs and Muslims and with such arrogance and as if you are the pinnacle of knowledge on these things. I know what it is. It is that internalized racial superiority. These guys, that's why I keep emphasizing, they're four blue-eyed guys that are sitting there, and they've been raised with their Ashkenazi white privilege for so long. It's just normal to them to talk about this, about Muslims, to talk about this, about Christians as if it's their own culture. That's that very weird intermingling of visible racism with all these kind of cultural issues that are being concocted that serve geopolitical interest. I focus on that myself as an academic. So I became part of a political economy program because I wanted to tie psychology, which often lacks within mainstream psychology departments, to the larger macro geopolitical contexts. And one aspect, and my papers always do that, and one very important aspect is racism and race. How that serves, how our racism in the West, our way of seeing Muslims and brown people, etc., serves large imperial states like the United States or Israel. And you see it in front of your eyes when you see these guys talk, literally telling thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who watch them, guys, you gotta hate these people, not us. Look at us. We look like you. We're almost the same. So therefore, our crimes are unimportant. Focus on them, even though they are the victims. And it's so incredibly powerful. And you really gotta ask yourself, Dimitri. So just like you, I also come from an atheist family, or non-religious, I would say. I wouldn't say atheist in the sense that we were not actively anti-religious or something, but we were just not religion, even though my mother came from a purely atheist Dutch socialist family. My father came from a mixed family. Some people were Muslims, some people were non-religious, very open-minded family. My stepdad came from a Catholic family, but stopped believing. So I am familiar with many kinds of ideologies and religions, etc., etc. And I've never experienced or felt that anyone is worse than the other one or more evil than the other. It's always about the people that are interpreting their holy book. And what I wanted to say is that there's one thing that is quite cultural, though, and that is that somehow both European Jews and European ethnic European, or you could say European Christians, a large part of both of these groups have turned the West Asian religion of Christianity and Judaism in racial supremacist murder cults. So you have these evangelical Christians who are white supremacists and also support Zionism. And you have these guys that you see there that are semi-white supremacist, Ashkenazi supremacists that turn their own originally peaceful religion into a supremacist murder cult that says you need to hate other people. So what I'm trying to say is that there are so many things at play here, you know, like religion, race, culture. And in the end, what you see in these guys is just the epitome of how all these things, culture, race, religion, all these social constructs are combining into very nasty, evil people that serve empire. You understand what I mean? Like you understand that linkage. I find it so important for people to understand when they watch their feed on Twitter, when they watch their feed on YouTube, when they see all these videos come by, like, oh, look at these Muslims, these shouting Muslims and with weird flags. And I'm like, guys, you gotta start noticing we're being manipulated here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You must become stronger psychologically to resist that kind of racism.
Yeah, and I'll say something else, man. If I spent a lot of time in. First of all, in full disclosure, as I think you know, Karim, my wife is born and raised in France, but her family, she's of Algerian origin. Both of her parents came from Algeria to France in the 1950s or 60s, I believe it was. And she has a large extended family, some of whose members continue to live in Algeria, and most of them are practicing Muslims, and including her mother and father. And although they're not particularly fervent Muslims, they consider themselves Muslims, and they know I'm an atheist. We've always had a very respectful relationship. They've never had a harsh word for me, never, not once. As in-laws go, I think I hit the jackpot with my mother and father-in-law. They know I'm an atheist, and that when I was younger, I came out of a Christian background. So this idea that that Muslims are intolerant or they try to impose their faith upon you is completely belied by my own personal experience. But what affected me even more in my views about Islam is the time that I've been spending in West Asia during this 2+ years of genocide. Having gone to Iran, I was in South Lebanon 5 times. I went to Iraq. I went to Jordan twice. I was in Palestine. I'm probably missing a country or two. And I will say this, that after having interacted so much with the Muslim peoples, and not all of them are Muslim, of course, but the Muslim peoples of the region, in a time of horrific oppression and suffering, if I were to be religious, I would be a Muslim. And the reason why I would be a Muslim is because the values of the people that I've met in my life and who practice Islam are most aligned with my own values. This caricature of Muslims in the West is totally contradictory to what I myself have experienced. I'm talking about having been married to a woman who's from a Muslim family for we've been together for over 30 years. So I know a thing or two about this community. I'm not an expert, but every time I see these comments about Muslims and how they constitute a threat and they're violent and they're savages, it's the exact opposite of my own personal experience. And if you look at the course of human history, I just talked about some horrific things that Christians did. But I think it's fair to say that people who identify as Christians have inflicted far more suffering and injustice on peoples in this world, all around the world, than people who identify as Muslims ever did. Who's responsible for the First World War? People who were Christians. Who's responsible for the Second World War? Christians. Who's responsible for the Holocaust? Christians. Who's responsible for the genocides in the Americas? Christians. Did Muslims do those things? Are Muslims carrying out a genocide right now? No. So if you want to look at the historical record and make claims about some particular group being inclined towards extreme violence, the evidence supports, and I don't believe that this is Christianity. I think that this is the actual opposite of what Jesus wanted. But the evidence supports to a far greater degree the contention that it is Christians who are inclined to extreme violence and oppression, not Muslims.
Absolutely. And I you know what it is, and that's what makes this issue so difficult, Dimitri. You know what's the problem? Even though we can all see the facts, okay, that Western imperialism, often in the name of Christianity, also colonialism, was so brutal and so violent and so genocidal. We can all see the facts. But there is this particularly powerful psychological effect of racism because it's visible. So even though people know this, Zionists and Hollywood and the West also have been so good at creating over the centuries a culture rooted in visible racism. Whether it's praying to a white-looking God, whether it's white angels, Maria, Joseph, etc., whether it's Hollywood movies with Allahu Akbar shouting criminals that grab blonde white women, all that conditioning has become so powerful that people are so easily swayed into seeing the victims as the savages. People sometimes wonder, why does he, also in my academic work, why does he focus so much on racism? And also when I teach international relations at the university, because it's such an important psychological organizing principle that just influences everything from the micro to the macro. That's why it also enrages me so much when I hear these guys speak, these four guys, because you see four blue-eyed European white Jews making use of that credit. They know it. They know it, these nasty pricks. They know what they're doing. They know, look at us. We are like you guys. We are white Westerners with our how do you call that? With our generic hair and our generic look and our generic gel in our hair. And look at us. We are you could get us. You could put us in a show called Friends. Like, oh, we're so average. Look at us. And then showing videos, probably of a lot of very sweet guys just having long black beards and looking a bit goofy according to Western standards, often even to Muslim standards, because a lot of them don't dress like that. But, like they like to and then show these goofy types. And then like look at them. You gotta hate them. They're so savage. Do something about it. And they just know how powerful this is. And a lot of people are just too simplistic to see through that superficial layer. You know what I mean? And you need so much counter conditioning to get rid of this stuff that people finally start seeing the truth, but start seeing the way we are being manipulated. And I am just wondering, how can we do that as a group of people that want justice? How can we do that with a completely privatized, monopolized global media system that is Zionist and Western run everywhere, from Google to Facebook, now to TikTok, to Instagram, to CNN, BBC, and they make use of that same kind of subtle racism to keep you into that imbalanced thinking. You understand what I mean here?
Yeah. And most racism is, you probably know far better than I do, given your expertise, Karim, but it's unconscious. I think most people in my lifetime I've met who were clearly racist to me strongly believe that they weren't racist, and studiously avoided explicit, overt expressions of racism. But if you listened very carefully to what they were saying and you tried to understand the nuance and the assumptions, the unspoken assumptions underlying their attitude towards peoples from other races, other cultures, other religions, it became apparent, and this is something it took me a long time to really appreciate, that I believe in our society today, and I think this has always been true throughout my life, that the majority of people, I would go so far as to say a large majority of the people, are subconsciously racist. And so we got a lot of work to do, and it's getting worse. It's getting much worse. And there are times where I really don't want to fall into this way of thinking. I feel like we are descending into a civilizational war, and that these people, the people you just put up on the screen there, and there's so many of them in the so-called Christian community and in the so-called Jewish community. Whether they actually are Jewish or Christian is a debate we're not going to have right now, but they're so vicious and so incapable of being reasoned with that ultimately we are going to find ourselves in a civil war. I fear that that's where this is all heading. They're going to kill us. Those of us who are opposed to this way of thinking, and to their racist oppression. I just don't think these people can be reasoned with. The people who continue to support Israel, this blows my mind. It blows my mind. If you still support Israel after everything Israel has done publicly and visibly and audaciously for over 2 years, I don't think you're capable of being reformed. You are one sick mofo, man. You are you are a danger to humanity. You are the lowest form of life. You are absolute moral scum if you continue to support Israel today. I don't care whether you're an atheist, a Jew, a Christian, a Muslim, doesn't matter to me. If you can still support that monstrosity, you're not a person who can be reasoned with. I don't think you can be reformed.
Yeah, you say something really important there, Dimitri. You say, I think the large majority of the world, or at least of our populations in the West, are racist. And you would anger a lot of people when you say that, but I agree with you. I think it's true. And the anger of a lot of people will go away once they understand that we do not mean intentionally racist. That is why a lot of my academic work also focuses on something that I call cultural racism. Okay, so I do a lot of work in what we would call cultural psychology, where I actually also focus on the idea that those who are even consciously anti-racist are culturally conditioned to be racist. That is also, for example, why anti-bias training among police officers does not work. And I've been writing about that a lot of times, because even if you have the most successful anti-bias training and the police officer shows no more bias after that training, you throw the police officer 1 week back into an environment where poor neighborhoods are full with people of color, where movies show people of color as criminals, show white people as the heroes, show news items that focus on specific groups. Your brain, even if you're consciously anti-racist, is conditioned to be racist. You know, you have these unconscious biases come back within no time. You know, and the ruling classes have found the cheat code to just keep us divided, because we're such visible beings and we're so focused on these kind of differences. Even if we're not talking about visible differences, there are other differences such as religion, etc. But the visible ones are, I would say, the most powerful, because we're such visible creatures as human beings. So yeah.
I want to add another qualification. I'm glad you made that qualification. It's very important, right? It's not conscious, and these people do genuinely, sincerely believe, a lot of them, that they're not racist, and they do try not to be racist. They just don't try hard enough, okay? And they're not fully aware of the many ways in which they're racist. There's another important qualification, and that is there are degrees of racism, okay? So at one extreme, there's the genocidal racist, the Israeli, the person who supports what Israel's doing to Palestinians, which is to say they're not only racist, but their racist translates into extreme violence, extermination, sadistic pleasure in the suffering of the oppressed race or the oppressed ethnic group. But then you have what I call soft racists, and that is actually the most common form of racism in our society. So one example, which I'll give you from my own family, when I was growing up, it wasn't just my parents, all my uncles and aunts and everything. The idea that their kids would marry a black person that's off the table, okay? But my parents and my uncles and aunts didn't wish harm on black people. And they would have never supported the idea that blacks should be enslaved, that they would have recoiled in horror at that idea. But they didn't want their kids to marry black people, and they didn't want us to marry Jewish people either. They wanted us to marry Greeks. And they thought Greeks were better than everybody else. Okay, that's just the bottom line. And so it took me a while to get that out of my system, you know. And I'll tell you something else. I still have things in me. There's still little elements of racism. I catch myself. One of the things that it took me a while to get this out of my system when I started advocating for the Palestinian people. Okay, which I really became heavily involved in the movement about 10 years ago. And at the time that I became very public in my advocacy for the Palestinian cause, I started to get, of course, as we all do when we advocate for Palestinians, I started to get accused 6 ways from Sunday of 2 things: anti-Semitism and support for terrorism. Okay. And I reflexively sought out people in the Jewish community to protect me. You know, I did that for 5 or 6 years. And why did I do that? In a way, there's a certain logic to it, but No, I shouldn't have gone. I should have put centered Palestinians. I should have called upon Palestinians to come and defend me. If I needed some support from comrades out there, the victims of the oppression. But I just reflexively went to people in our society who were relatively privileged relative to the Palestinians, and I had to get that out of my system. And if it meant that I was going to be more exposed to accusations of anti-Semitism and support for terrorism because I didn't have anti-Zionist Jews standing in front of me defending me, then that was a price I was prepared to pay. That doesn't mean I don't appreciate. I have been supported by anti-Zionist Jews. I'm profoundly appreciative of that. But and that's just one example I can give you. There are others. I think probably for the rest of my life, I'll be trying to cleanse myself of the racism in which I grew up. And it wasn't just in my family. The society in which I grew up was intensely racist. It was a white supremacist society. Canada, when I was a kid, and it's going back. It's going to be the way we're heading. It's going to be worse than it was when I was a kid.
Yep.
So so I don't think I have been fully cleansed of racism myself.
No, me neither. I mean, I grew up in the Netherlands, typical Western European country, colonial, formerly colonial country, actually still colonial country. We still have colonies, but I would say that, yeah, that's something we gotta admit, that we are unintentionally racist, not because we are bad people. We don't want to be racist. We are not born racist. It's because we have been conditioned for decades to be racist. You put on the news in your society, you open your textbooks, who are represented, who are not represented. So you can say, oh, it's woke. It's woke if you want to have a black person or a Muslim person represented in books or video games. No, it's well, okay, then it's woke. But actually, it's important psychologically. It's important for the mental cognitive schemas that we create. If you open a book as a child, 5-year-old child, and every doctor and every hero and every is a European, that shapes your mentality, and you become an unwitting racist later in life, whether you want it or not. So all these woke policies are actually very important. I say that as a psychologist, that is super important. And you're right. It's a lifelong battle against racism. And I would like to have a world where our future children would not need to engage in a lifelong battle to unlearn all that hatred or that contempt that they feel towards other human beings, even though they don't want to. You know what I mean? I think our societies are literally abusing us in that sense. They are making us hate each other. They are making us divided, and they're just giving us a terrible life in that sense. And you are absolutely. I found it a very admirable admission of you when you said, "Okay, I was looking for Jews to make my case." I think that is a very important admission, because I think we all went through that kind of struggle. That's why I also want to talk to you soon about our personal trajectory in our lives towards the people that we've become. I mean, you come from immigrant Greek parents. You've also been in some way, shape, or form an outsider in the country Canada where you grew up. I am a mixed kid. I have a dad from Algeria, a Dutch mother. I also have one foot inside my country, one foot outside my country, you could say. And that also gave me these kind of struggles in the past. And I think it is very important, these kind of psychological developments through life and how that makes you who you are today. And for example, to give you an example, what you had with the Jews that you used, or that you wanted to have to defend your points. Like, for example, when I was a teenager, I would, for example, in a society, in a country where I was only among native ethnic Dutch people, I would find ways to just hide or avoid mentioning my background too much, especially my father's background. You know what I mean? Because especially when I was younger and I was in new areas, in new places, and I would meet new people, one of the worst thing to do was just introducing yourself and then introducing yourself with your Arab name. You would get so many questions, and you had to defend against so much crap that eventually I would just use a Dutch name or something, or a Mediterranean name that is not Arabic, because
Yeah.
it was just unbearable as a kid. You know what I mean? Especially if you grow up. I mean, I grew up with a white mom, white stepdad, white sister. Everything, my whole life is Dutch. You know, and to have to like explain and be put into a box was so incredibly exhausting as a child. But now, as an adult man, and I look back at my young self, I luckily I grew out of it quite early, but that because I started reading a lot, activism and that kind of stuff. But I'm happy if I now look at my young self. Would I say to myself, "I wish you hadn't done that"? Then I would not be who I am today. So I think I needed to go through that kind of process, that kind of development to get to who I am right now. I see you want to say something, Dimitri.
I was just going to say I'm not at all surprised by what you're saying, because when I was 28, 29, I guess I was at that point working for a Wall Street law firm, and I had very different politics back then. So we're talking the early 1990s, okay, and I definitely leaned to the right. So I went through a big evolution politically in my adult life. So when my firm, I persuaded them to send me to their Paris office. I really wanted to go work in their Paris office. So in 1993, I arrived in Paris. I'd never lived in France. And I was not the kind of guy who thought about racism a lot. I wasn't on the lookout for it. I wasn't sensitive to it. It wasn't like topmost in my mind. And I could see right away, Kareem, it was obvious, as clear as day, that Arabs in France are second-class citizens. Algerians, Muslims, Moroccans, Libyans. Interestingly, I didn't have quite the same impression about people from the Francophone part of sub-Saharan Africa, black people. They definitely were, victims of racism as well, and they weren't living, their quality of life was significantly below that of whites in France. But you could see immediately there was oppression of people from the global South in that society, and I can't imagine if I was an Algerian or a Moroccan growing up in Europe, I'm sure I would have felt exactly as you did. Don't talk about that side of my heritage, because that's not going to win me any friends amongst the elite.
Yeah, and the Netherlands is at least as bad. I always say the Netherlands is obsessed with Muslims. Obsessed. Every newspaper talk program, it's slowly got a little bit better, but when I grew up, it was every day, everywhere, Islam. You will not believe it, how extreme it was. I cannot speak for it now. I don't live in that country anymore. But also, it's compared. I think it's a Europe-wide problem. But I would say some are the worst. I would say the Netherlands is extremely bad. Denmark is extremely bad. Austria, France, and you. Yeah.
Nazism was a European-wide phenomenon. Everybody talks about the German Nazis. Well, there were a lot of Nazis outside of Germany who, who thought that way. And personally, I believe, Karim, that if the British and the French had not feared that Hitler wanted to dominate their countries, they would have been happy to collaborate with the Third Reich. And, you want us to help you murder Slavs? Sure, no problem. You want us to help you massacre Jews? Knock yourself out. Just don't try to dominate us. And that's ultimately why they formed an alliance with the Soviet Union, is because Hitler was a threat to their power and prestige as well. But there's a lot.
Even that has stopped, because with the Zionists they have the same thing. They're like, slaughter them Arabs. Who cares? But they also know that they are dominating the Western societies, and they are pretty much like, oh, okay, go ahead, take over our countries as well. I mean, like, and what I like is and I think who said that again? I think it was Max Eil. When we talked to Max Eil. Yeah, I think it was Max Eil. Sorry, Max, if it's not you, but I think it was you. Let's not forget, Hitler was nothing new. Colonialism was 500 years of Hitlerism. And that's what Max Eyal always says. Colonialism was Hitlerism. Yeah.
Sure.
And
Look what the Belgians did in the Congo.
the Belgians did in the Congo, or the French in Algeria.
Or the Germans in, I believe, Tanzania, well before the Third Reich, right? But this is the horrors that Europeans have inflicted upon the global South is just boggles the mind. I never heard that statement before, but what was his name? Max
Eyal, AJL.
Yeah, I'll check him out because I think he nailed it.
Yeah, so I just want
to. By the way, I only a couple of minutes left. Sorry, Karim. I thought we were going to be done by this time. So I have.
Sorry.
No problem.
So what was that? What was that place again? Namibia. Namibia was also colonized by.
Namibia where the Germans committed heinous atrocities. Was it Tanzania or was it Namibia? Namibia. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was. I think that was in Namibia. I'm not sure, but I know that Tanzania was also colonized by the Germans. But before we go, I think there was not a single European colonial country that did not Hitlerism. The Dutch did it in Indonesia. The British did it in Kenya. They did it in you name it. They did it in India. The Spanish did it in Latin America.
Absolutely. Horrific what they did. So for them to be lecturing Muslims about peace and tolerance, I mean, give me a break, man.
Yeah.
Come on. Take a look at your own house. Don't throw stones from a glass house, motherfucker.
Yeah. That is against the power of racism, Dimitri. You've been so conditioned that a certain look and a certain culture in video games, in movies, in everything has been so positioned as the apex of humanity that even somebody like Netanyahu, after more than 2 years of genocide, still says that he's fighting barbarians and he is civilization. And it's just such an internalized conditioning of I'm a white-looking man in a suit, and therefore the rest of the world will believe me. And unfortunately, a lot of people fall for that crap because they've been so racially conditioned. It's such a powerful thing. Yeah. So we are at the end while talking about something completely different. I wanted to talk about the UN vote with you, but we can do it another time, my brother, if that's fine with you.
Yeah, because if I start going, I'm going to be going for 15 minutes. I'm still so, a word that lawyers love to use is apoplectic. That best describes, I'm just going to say this and close it out, and we can continue the discussion later. What the UN Security Council has basically done is they put Hitler in charge of Auschwitz. That's exactly what they damn well did. This is a disgrace, and it will be an eternal stain on the United Nations that nothing will ever wash off. I'm just beside myself.
Yep. Me too. And I'm surprised at the people first who hardly give it any attention. But I'm also surprised at the people who defend all the countries, including Algeria, that accepted this monstrosity. They handed over Gaza to its killers and rapists. It's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable after more than 2 years of genocide. Anyway, we will talk about that soon when you have more time, brother. Great talking to you again. Say hi to your family, your wife, and how many kids do you have, Dimitri?
Two.
Okay.
I have a son and a daughter. As the French say, it's the choix du roi.
Oh, okay. So half Algerian kids, just like me, they must be very good looking.
They are. They don't resemble me at all. Their mother is a beautiful woman, so they.
That's what I mean. Okay, great. We'll talk to you soon, man. We will talk a bit more about the UN thing and everything. And good luck with everything. Also, your cases that you're fighting.
I'm going to have you on my program soon, so we can talk about all kinds of things that we need to catch up on. Take care, brother.
Absolutely. All right.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
حبيت القمر طلع القمر اصطناعي شميت الورد طلع الورد بلاستيكي انا حبيت القمر طلع القمر اصطناعي شميت الورد طلع الورد بلاستيكي تكتيكي تكتيكي